sexual relations.
And I realized that this is something he isn't
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
And this is Steve Hickson. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Backfire.
Good morning.
With Franklin Chansey and John Stanberry and my chief engineer, Daniel Brantley.
Where's the beef?
Well, we're all here, and it's a beautiful day outside. And I guess we ought to talk about school starting, right?
I guess.
The 5th for the city schools, the 6th for the county, I think, is what I read. Anyway, summers are getting shorter and shorter, aren't they?
Well, I'm going to say it again. North Georgia took 20 minutes off each, or added 20 minutes to each day and dropped the entire month of August off the schedule. I have kids in my office all the time, and I pitched that to all of them, and I had one just the other day, and she said absolutely she'd take 20-minute longer day to have the month of August off.
Yeah.
August is the most expensive month to cool those school buildings down, and they have to start in July to get them cooled down.
And, you know, August used to be probably one of the best vacation times.
Was.
I mean, all the industry loved August.
Well, it's already fall outside.
Daniel says it's already fall outside.
Yeah, it is one of my pet peeves, the shortening of the summer.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's in the long-term benefit of the children.
Now, they've got the argument that kids, and they have documents of how much kids lose from, you know, May to the start of the next year. But you know what? Somehow, people like Franklin and I managed to get through law school and dental school with that base of education. Of course,
Well, this sounds crazy, that, you know, time off in the summer, you learn all kinds of things in different ways.
That's true.
And your summer activities also teach you things. And there are things that we need to learn sometimes beyond just reading, writing, and arithmetic and STEM and all that stuff.
See,
I personally think that that's an area where we've lost sight of that.
For all the people that kind of every now and then ask me if Franklin and I hate each other after their show, just listen. We're actually completely on the same page and agreeing with each other.
Oh. Anyway, it just, every time I look at the school starting back, it just, you know, it seems like they're just starting back earlier and earlier every year. I don't know.
Well, they are starting back earlier and earlier every year.
I don't know. I just
keep
don't
in mind,
understand why.
like Ian played football up at Walker Valley. The football boys never really get off.
Yeah, they work out all year long.
They'll have games in August. So, you know, they've got to start getting ready. In July, there's a little window that TSSAA forces them not to practice. I think there's a 2-week window that they're not allowed to practice.
You know, there for a while, it seems like they were all pushing year-round school.
Well, I don't have a problem with that either. That's, you know, if you're going to...
That's a different concept, but I mean, even in that, every couple of months you get 2 weeks off.
Right.
So,
well, they get 2 months off. I mean, they get about a week or so off about every other month now.
Well, here's the thing. When they throw out the numbers and they go, well, the kids lose so much over summer break. I mean, Franklin's right. If you have 2 months, you've got that detriment. So they're not gaining anything by shortening it because they're not shortening it enough. Year-round school would probably shorten it enough because your breaks are 2 weeks at a time here and there, so you wouldn't lose as much. So if they really believed what they were saying, they'd go to year-round school. But they don't. You know, in this 188 days, that's a crock, too. You talk to any kid in May, and he'll tell you we're watching movies, you know, they don't do anything the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Most of them are out.
That's not true. I'm going to get fussed at. They don't do anything. But it's certainly not an intensive regimen the last couple of weeks.
Once those state-mandated testing passes,
right,
there seems to be a drop-off.
Well, I see them out playing games and stuff in the schoolyards there.
Well, the kids, I asked the kids again in my office, oh, what are you doing? Well, we're watching movies. You know, the kids will tell you we're not really, you know, our tests are over, so, you know, we're kind of done. We got 2 more weeks. And the 11 snow days, You know, you'll notice that once we really get through the sort of problem months, well, then all of a sudden, hey, it sprinkled a little today. We're going to close school. Why not just take the days that you haven't spent
Take them
and
off.
take them off the end?
Did you guys have summer reading when you were in school also, required?
Some, as you got older, you had some. Miss Fitzgerald, people like that might give you some reading over breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just thought I'd bring it to everyone's attention. School's going to be starting here in another week or so.
Way to pick the scab off that.
Yeah. While you're at it, you'll notice that Halloween things are already out in the stores along with back to school.
You got to be kidding me. Halloween's out.
Halloween's out.
You got to be kidding me. My Lord, it's getting earlier and earlier, too. Did you hear DA Steve Trump speak the other day about the opioid that, I guess, where was he? Somewhere he was speaking. But anyway, he said that 68,000 opioid deaths. Tennessee has suffered that, which is greater than the number of soldiers lost in Vietnam.
Tennessee was the only of its surrounding states that the number of opioid deaths increased last year. The other ones actually managed to go down some finally. So we clearly have a problem.
We've been top of the list for a long time.
I saw that there was a significant lawsuit filed by the federal government in Nashville this week against a business called Comprehensive Pain Specialists that operated about 60 pain clinics, including one here in Cleveland that was owned by a local resident here who also got sued in this process.
Well, I read that, and I want to say something there. When I was dealing with my mother, she was having some chronic pains there for a while, so I was taking her to a pain specialist. But I will say this: they got those doctors for the urination test. That's where they said they were misusing all that. Everyone had taken. But I tell you something, the doctor I was going to, I was happy he did, because he was testing them to see what they were on, to make sure that they weren't in there just trying to get more.
What's supposed to happen is that you do a comprehensive test to start the process to make sure they're not taking other things.
Right.
After that, the test is supposed to be specific to the medication that you're prescribing. In other words, is the appropriate level in the person's system. That's what they're looking for.
Well, I was told that they did it to see in other words, that they were
catch them.
To catch them when they were lying. Are you on anything else? No.
Well, understand, there is a state database that these doctors can already check to determine if you have any other prescriptions you're getting. So that's already available.
The pharmacy. But here's the thing, Steve. There are pain management specialists, I want to make sure I make that distinction. Yeah. There are doctors, just like the oral surgeon and an endodontist in dentistry. There are doctors that are pain management specialists. That is not the people that we're talking about in most cases. And there's a bad apple in every basket. Mm-hmm. But those are different from these clinics, which are pain. I don't want to say management, because the specialists call themselves pain management docs. And they are serious about this. If they ask me for a narcotic pain prescription and that pain management specialist finds out about it, they will drop them from the program. Mm-hmm. So there are legitimate doctors in town that's what they do, and they do a good job. These are clinics that basically are using the system to find an excuse to hand out prescriptions. For example, a lot of them, in the past at least, had chiropractors that were at them. Now, a chiropractor can't write a prescription, but they had a doctor that would maybe visit 30 clinics, and just drive all over the state, and he would come in and he'd sign all these prescriptions, or he would allow them to be written under his DEA number. That's the kind of program that we're talking about.
Well, in this case, there was a chiropractor who owned the clinic and employed a doctor.
Now, chiropractors have no ability to write a prescription.
Mm-hmm.
I just read the article, and immediately I knew that in some of the pain clinics, they make them do urine tests to just see if they're lying to them.
But the clinics we're talking about are only doing the urine test to dot the I and cross the T of the point of these kind of clinics is to dole out narcotic medicines.
In this particular case, it was the kind of test they were ordering, which was much more expensive and unnecessary.
Well, I read that too. There's an in-house test that's less expensive versus if you send it out. And then they set up a lab where it was out of the office that they sent it to. That was where they got caught.
And then having a
So they
cozy
could get paid more.
relationship with that lab and sometimes kickbacks involved with that.
Well, I do know, and I'm not as familiar with the cases both of you all are, but I know that doctors are not supposed to, under I think Medicare, they're not supposed to do the test in-house because of that very reason. They're worried about them doing tests simply to be able to make money. I will tell you that, like everything government does, there are problems with that. My brother had a little machine, and you put your blood in it, and it had little basically plug-in cartridges to test for different things.
Right.
So you come in, and he wants to test your creatinine level, and he draws your blood, he puts it in there, he punches that in, and he tests for that level.
Right.
And it's about, at the time, I think he was getting $35 for that test. Well, the government puts this law in place and says, oh, you can't do your own test because you're going to take advantage of us. So now he draws your blood, and he has to send it out to test the creatinine. Well, the labs won't test for creatinine. You have to do a full complement. You know, there's like a basic thing. Well, that was $108. So the government, in trying to protect from fraud, which doctors were doing it, ended up also costing themselves more money because in his case, he said, I don't want all those other things tested, but that's the minimum test I can get from the outside lab. So you cut your nose off to spite your face sometimes.
Franklin, who is the local doctor that was got the issues? Might as well talk about it.
Well, it was reported in the paper that a chiropractor here named Russell Smith owned a pain clinic here.
I can't imagine a chiropractor having a pain clinic.
Actually, that's been the standard for a lot of these cases I've seen. That's sort of the operating mode. Now there's a physician involved, but he's basically renting his DEA number out for all practical purposes.
Well, it was actually an employee of the clinic.
Was a doctor.
Was a doctor.
But my point is, there is a doctor involved.
Sure.
Well, Steve Crump, our DA, also said that we have 5,000 opioid addicts in Bradley County, and the jail justice center can only hold 470.
Yeah.
In other words, we got to do something about the drug issues here in Cleveland.
Well, I can tell you in dentistry, we've discussed this a lot. I think sometimes they go a little too far. I haven't written narcotic prescriptions in a long, long time. And I don't get bothered. I never got bothered much in the first place because I was not very easy to work with for narcotics if I felt like you were not sincere. But I haven't written them at all. We write one called Ultram, which is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. It's a non-narcotic. Supposed to be narcotic kind of level pain relief, but it's a non-narcotic. They've included it in these new guidelines, which is you can't write anymore. It gets into the strength and how many you write, but basically you can't write over 18 at a time. I never wrote over 12 anyway of anything. But now it has to be written. You can't phone it in. And I personally thought that was a little bit of an overkill because there's no narcotic effect. There's no narcotic in that drug. Right. But they have done that. But one thing we did look at, we routinely recommend that kids get their wisdom teeth out as early as you kind of can because they're a problem waiting to happen, and the younger you take them out, the easier they are to take out. So it was fairly routine when you took them out at 14, 15, 16, 17 that they got 9 or 12 narcotic pain pills. Well, now research has shown that any exposure to narcotic pain pills, opioids, before age about 20, 21 significantly increases your risk of becoming addicted. So we're changing our protocols.
Well, let me ask a question. Opioids is something that came up during this last generations or something. What did you used to give back?
Opioids.
It's a morphine based.
Well,
yeah.
When your dad was doing it.
Yeah, Lortab or
I've heard
Tylenol 3.
Okay.
That's codeine or hydrocodone.
All right.
The problem is we've just gotten carried away with it. Now, my daughter had major surgery on her foot, and I guess I can kind of understand that. But she came home with a prescription for 120 Lortabs.
What you do?
Well, we didn't take them.
I know.
We didn't fill it, actually. And she had, I mean, they broke bones and put screws in and stripped ligaments out. So it was major reconstructive surgery on her foot. But still, that's a lot of opioids.
Yeah.
That is amazing, actually.
Did you hear about Wes Snyder?
No.
He used to be the police chief. He fell off the top of a house while he was pressure washing it, and he crushed feet. Both of them. I mean, he's so bad. Well, they took him by helicopter to Erlanger. That's how bad he was. And anyway, he's home now, from what I understand. But I think he's had a lot of suffering, and they're waiting on something to heal before they even start surgeries on it. He busted a bunch of bones and stuff in his feet.
It's a very difficult recovery and a very difficult surgical procedure to repair.
That's what I understand. But anyway,
Fortunately, I don't know that
Send
he
prayers out
got
for
there or
him.
not, but one of the best foot specialists, trauma specialists in the country happens to be in Chattanooga. So,
Well, I had a minor, I had to jump out of a deer stand that was collapsing on me, and I crushed all of the bones and across the arch of my foot, and I limp, you know, it gets cold, or if I'm walking a lot, I'll start limping by the end of the day. That's a hard, you know, your feet are a lot of little bones in there.
I think Wes really messed it up. So
Yeah.
prayers out to him. I want to ask you about New York right now.
The policeman.
The policeman. What in the Franklin? I mean, I know you probably don't even can condone with that. I mean, it's pouring water over the top of the police.
Well, it could have been anything. It could have been acid. It could have been bleach.
I know it. They're just doing anything to a policeman. That's just so disrespectful. I don't think I would care what de Blasio would do to me if I was a policeman. You have the right to make a citizen's arrest if
See,
you have to.
you're talking about destroying your career and your ability to feed your family. So it's not as simple as that.
Well, then I'd sue de Blasio. He'd be my next victim. But
You'd
what's
be
your
sued.
opinion about this
you're
kind of
talking
stuff?
about these folks throwing the water on these
Right.
folks?
Yeah, on the
That's
police.
terrible.
On the police.
It's
Well,
terrible.
but Franklin, I said this a year or 2 years ago, that you can't treat the policemen the way we are as a culture, as a society. You can't treat them the way we're treating them and expect them to continue to do the job. Police recruitment is down 11% across the country. They're just not going to be yelled at. They're not going to be second-guessed. They're not going to be imprisoned because of a 3-second decision that they had to make. You can't treat them like this.
I mean, I can't imagine somebody coming up and pouring buckets of water over you and you just walking away and continue to throw
Well,
buckets of water at you.
The young police officer that did that is fresh out of the academy, and they're on probation. He's not on probation for doing anything wrong, but when they first get out on the street, they're on probation, and basically, if they make any mistakes, they can lose their job. And so it's a shame when you watch. That has to be humiliating. to
Well,
them.
I'm telling you something. Barney Fife can make a citizen's arrest.
Well, here's
Citizen's
my
arrest.
point, though, about the bigger picture of the liberal progressive mindset. That's been circulating for 3 or 4 days. The police commissioner has not said a single comment about it. And de Blasio, I support my men. Yeah, you mean the men that you routinely in public speeches say, I tell my son to be scared of the police? Those men and women?
Well, de Blasio, I don't know. How did he ever get elected? It sounds to me like New Yorkers hate him also.
They do now, but he was spouting this same liberal progressive nonsense when he came in. And part of this is the fault, to be honest, of successful mayors like Rudy Giuliani. Giuliani comes in, cleans the city up, gets everything working again, gets the tourism industry back. Bloomberg had enough sense to sort of leave it alone. Well, that success lulls people into a sense of, well, it'll be okay. And so they allowed de Blasio to start dismantling it piece by piece.
The census question. Should that have been allowed to be
It's
on.
been allowed since probably, I think it's been on there for about 150 years.
What's the problem with it now?
Franklin and them are trying to
it's
bump
pretty
up their
fairly
numbers in
clear.
Congress.
Well, first of all, that is what the Constitution provides for. So I don't
Actually,
know.
about
No, it does.
1830 is when they started asking the citizenship question for this very reason.
The
Franklin?
Constitution says specifically
All peoples.
all peoples. All right.
But
We're supposed to be counted.
But we are
Hold on.
counting them.
Hold on.
We're simply asking them if they're citizens or not.
In the comments that the president made and other members of administration made it fairly clear that what the intent was.
What
The
was it?
intent was to undercount.
No,
it was.
No, they didn't say that. They said the intent was to find out how many illegal aliens are in the country.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be good information?
Absolutely.
But
For anybody with any common sense. Or people that weren't gaming the system to increase representation
My
of
point is-
Democrat
my point-
congressmen.
You know, there's an easy way to deal with this, John.
What?
All you have to do is change the Constitution so that it says citizens as opposed to residents.
Actually, Franklin, you're
That's
right
all you
about
have
that,
to do.
Because the Constitution, while it doesn't say that, it doesn't say you can't ask it either. Does it?
The point is,
Why would
your
you want to change the
constitutional
Constitution?
responsibility is to make sure you get the most accurate count of how many people are here.
Okay,
That's what
always-
you're supposed to do.
People.
People. That's
We
right.
are getting the count, Franklin. We're just, you ask all kinds of other questions. Are you married? Are you white? Are you black?
Everybody
Are you
who looked at
Hispanic?
this reached the same conclusion that all the experts.
All right, well, when are you all
that
going to
it
say
was going
that?
to hold down the count.
When are you all going to say that asking if you're Hispanic is racist and has to be taken off?
I like just an American.
Look, Franklin, I go in to buy a gun and it asks me my race. I have no idea why they want to know that. I think it's kind of offensive in some ways,
Okay.
but I don't hear your people up in arms over that.
There's no indication that stops you from getting a gun, though, does it?
I'm glad you
There's
said
no
that. You know what?
indication
I'm
that it
glad
dissuades
wait a
you
minute,
from
wait a
answering
minute.
the question.
I'm glad you said that because you all's
Most of
only
those-
argument, hang on, you just said that question doesn't discourage anybody from answering or from
But
getting
there
a
is a
gun.
difference
But
in that.
no, there's not.
No, there is.
Your argument is that this will
there is.
discourage people from answering the census. You are
The census,
hypocritical.
nobody said
right
the
here sitting
census
next to
can't
me.
ask about race or ethnic views. This was a specific question about citizenship.
Are you a citizen or not?
Yes.
Well, guess what?
And it does not take a rocket scientist to figure out that person would be less likely to answer the question because of the fact that it could lead the government to them. Everybody
All right,
understands
let me
that.
ask you a question, Franklin. On the gun thing, it asks if you're a criminal.
Mhm.
Is that a unfair question?
Is it an unfair question?
To ask someone if they're a criminal? Why would we ask that?
Because I think it's an actual crime if you lie on that.
Isn't it a crime to illegally enter the country still? I mean, your people
Yes,
haven't
and
done away with it
there
yet.
are ways of handling that.
How? Tell us how. We'd like to know.
Well, evictions from the country went up dramatically during the Obama years. What are you talking
Well,
about?
let's talk about the
Actually,
open
we
borders.
asked that question
Let's
during
talk about
Obama
the
and
open
Bush.
borders. Let's talk about all those people we're mishandling on the borders right now because we're trying to find out what their status is.
We're not trying to find out their status.
What are
at
we
all,
trying to find?
apparently.
Well, what are we trying to find out then?
I don't know. When we have American citizens who are held for 3 months because they didn't have a passport.
One
with them.
person, and he should have had a passport.
Every
he
week.
should have had a passport.
John, there's not a week that's gone by in the last 5 years that you haven't walked in here with some outrageous story about one person doing something. But when I point one out, it's, la-di-da,
Well,
big
Franklin,
deal.
what do you want to do about the one person? You want to throw everybody out
Wait a
for the
minute.
one person?
What are you talking about?
I'm showing where his side. I'll bring in. Well, I've got some today.
Uh-huh.
Where
Of course you do.
his
And
side.
those will be big deals.
Yes, but
But I poison it out, it's like,
Wait a
no
minute.
big deal.
We're trying to understand what y'all are talking about here. Go ahead.
what I'm trying to show, Franklin, is the direction that the liberal progressive mindset that you subscribe to is leading. what you're doing is you're taking one exception. Let me give you a good example then, Franklin. So if you're saying that one person that was held illegally justifies your position that we shouldn't be doing all this.
I didn't say anything at
well,
all.
Let me ask you a question. So when President Trump and myself point out the criminals who kill people who shouldn't be here, is that not equally as representative?
Actually, John, I am just making the point that you constantly pick out these little episodes and say things like that.
Then you can make the argument
I don't think
back.
that they make any difference, generally speaking.
So you don't think this one guy that was held for 3 weeks makes a difference?
Not in the overall scheme of things, I don't.
So you're still for open borders?
I've never been for open
Your
borders.
party is.
No, that's not
Your
true
party,
either.
absolutely.
Then why do we have open borders?
We don't have open borders.
Well, what do you call it?
These are people who came and sought asylum there. These aren't people who were rounded up in the desert, Steve. These are people who walked up and said, I want to seek asylum. That's not open borders.
What do you call
See,
it?
y'all just say
Wait a
this
minute.
crap like
Wait a
there's some
minute.
truth to
Franklin,
it.
Mother Jones Magazine, probably one of the most liberal magazines in the country, wrote a piece last week and said the Democratic Party is effectively arguing for complete open borders. That was Mother Jones Magazine, Franklin, not National Review. You all
Well, okay.
were
then. That makes it true.
and Elon Omar, AOC just I think 2 days ago, you can pull the video over up, says, I think it's a human right to be able to go wherever you want to. So I think people should be able to come and go through countries without any question.
Okay,
That
so
is
that's one
open
person.
borders. No, that is the face of your party these days.
Only because Fox News talks about her every day.
Talks about who?
No, it's true. They've looked at this. Nobody talks about
Of course they
AOC
don't, because they're
more than
protecting
Fox
her.
News.
Because the rest
The
of the media is
liberal
protecting her.
stations don't put her on
Of
there.
course not. Because surveys show that
You talking
all
about
of
the
her
bartender?
positions.
Yeah.
You talking about
guys
the
are obsessed
ex-bartender?
with her and say she's the face of the party,
We're
but
not
you're the
obsessed
only
with her,
people who are
Franklin.
putting her on television.
Franklin,
it's
here's-
crazy.
Here's the reason. Because the rest of the mainstream media is trying to carry water for the Democrats. And all the polling shows that her and all of her buddies in the squad, their positions are so out of touch with the rest of the country, it's not even funny. And so, yeah,
And
you're
as
right.
I point out, the so-called liberal stations don't put her on television all the
Because
time.
they're protecting the party. They're carrying
How
water
is she
for the
the
Democrats.
face of the party if the party doesn't put her out there? That's the dumbest thing you ever said in here. And there's a
It's
big
not.
list of those.
Let me give you an example.
Who opens their mouth the most from your
Her.
party?
She is on the news. She is on Twitter all the time.
She's on Fox all
No,
the
Franklin,
time.
she's on Facebook. They get her off of Facebook. She regularly posts videos on Facebook. And by the way, Franklin, all these positions I'm talking about, almost all of your major contenders to run against President Trump support the bulk of these positions.
Here's a story you ought to be talking about. The Republican head of the FBI yesterday testified in Congress that half the domestic terrorists arrested by the FBI in the last year were white supremacists.
So, arrest them.
Oh, but it's the liberal media who's foisting all this stuff on us.
Franklin.
Maybe it's the
No.
right-wing nuts
Franklin,
on Fox who are
the
creating
nuts
these
that get
problems.
arrested, for example, you arrest a nut when he threatens to kill somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Your people are trying to kill people. The Antifa guy just last week, your party hasn't even condemned that. They haven't condemned the
When the
Antifa
head of the
movement.
white nationalist group here comes on and says all of Trump's comments are red meat for us, you guys act like that doesn't matter. The
Franklin,
President of the United States regularly goes out and says things that white nationalists love. But you think, oh, it doesn't matter
What is
the
a white
president says.
what is a white nationalist?
People who think that
Am I one?
people of color
Am I
ought
one?
to be out of the country, that shouldn't have power, that only the white citizens of the country ought to be in charge of things. Those are white nationalists.
You know what I think that is? That's a bunch of Democratic bull. That's what I think it is.
What is that? What those people were up in Charlottesville?
What?
They were Democratic bull.
Who are the ones that wears masks when they start protesting? Who's those? What's that group called? Antifa? Are they white nationalists too?
No, they're anti-white nationalists.
Okay. I thought they were millennials.
They're anti-fascists who use fascist tactics.
I've got a lot of stuff for us to talk about, but we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
America's original music from Southeast Tennessee's window to the world. Whoop FM and Whoop Online, 24/7 every day.
Yeah, you looking for something sweet? I know you are. Bring your little sweet self to the Village Bake Shop. Around since 1961, there ain't a baked good in the galaxy the Village Bake Shop can't whip up for you. So when you're ready to treat your mouth to a taste you won't soon forget, get over to the Village Bake Shop in the Village Green Town Center, or give them a call at 476-5179. You dig?
Dr. Christopher Chase, with Associates in Plastic Surgery, now offers his patients the convenience of a Cleveland office at 2350 North Ocoee Street. Dr. Chase specializes for the ladies in breast augmentation, including lifts, reconstructions, and reductions. Also, tummy tucks or mommy makeovers, and facial rejuvenation, including facelifts, eyelids, brows, nose, and he also offers Botox procedures. Check out Dr. Christopher Chase. He is certified by the American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Plastic Surgery. He's a member of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons and the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. Check their website out at aprs.md. That's aprs.md. Call for your convenient appointment in Cleveland at 624-0021. 624-0021. 2350 North Ocoee. That's Dr. Christopher Chase. Attention, Cleveland area creditors. Are you tired of dealing with debtors that owe you money? I'm Jeff Renfro, and I've owned and operated Financial Recovery, a debt recovery specialist here in my hometown of Cleveland for 18 years. We're a licensed and bonded Tennessee collection agency working for a wide variety of creditors, from commercial, manufacturing, physicians, dentists, attorneys, small business owners, to individuals. Look, any kind of business dealing with billing, charge accounts, or even return checks. I know your past due accounts are not a top priority for you, but they would be to me. Let me try to make it easy for you to make a change in the way you've been handling your accounts. There's no contract and no cost to you in most cases, as our fee of only 30% can be added to the balance owed to you. So, whether you have hundreds of accounts monthly and need help with your billing and collection, or you're just an individual and somebody owes you money, let me help you. Give me a call at 400-5376 and I'll come by and see you. That's 400-5376.
Financial Recovery, a licensed and bonded collection agency in Cleveland, Tennessee, 400-5376.
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
every Saturday. That's right, every Saturday.
From 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239. Or go see him
every Saturday
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
Boy, you can sure tell it's summertime. And it's getting hot, but you can beat the heat at Economy Rentals. Yes, beat the heat for only $25.95 a week with a 15,000 BTU air conditioner. That's only $25.95 a week. Economy Rentals, Cleveland's oldest and locally owned rent-to-own store, makes it easy to own. Whether you're looking for appliances, furniture, TVs, electronics, and more. Don't forget, you can always get the washer and dryer combo, only $21.95 a week, or 2 rooms of furniture, only $39.95 a week. But don't forget, beat the heat now. Get you some AC, baby. Call 472-6105 or go by 901 Sahara Drive. That's 472-6105 or 901 Sahara Drive. EconomyRentals.net and on Facebook. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Man, it feels good in here with this AC. Woo!
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
I was looking at the Sunday edition of the banner, and the headline was Study Green Lights Inman Street Corridor Proposal. I had one question. Why don't we do something about the green lights on Keith Street and Paul Huff?
Well, aren't they referring to green light here as in just approving?
Yeah, that's what they're talking about. They're just approving the proposal.
The transformation.
Well, I thought they were talking about red lights.
No.
Well, let's talk about red
They
lights.
only mean that in a general term of...
Let's talk about red lights then.
Okay.
How about Keith Street?
It ought to be synchronized better.
And Paul Huff. How come they can't do that? They can do all these proposals, but they can't get the lights fixed on Keith Street or Paul Huff.
Well, Cleveland Utilities is in charge of that now.
Well, I know it. I will say there's a light or two around town that is much better than it used to be. One of them's at
20th and
20th and
Ocoee.
Ocoee. It's much better than it
Well,
used to be.
I come out at Henderson and 25th, and that light is not. You will come up to that from Henderson, and because I'll come up there all times of day and night because the office is right over there, and nobody is on the street, and you will sit and sit and sit and wait for that light.
All right, let's talk about the mayor vetoing the tax increase.
Is he going to veto it?
I heard he was going to veto it probably today.
Why would
Tomorrow's the deadline.
Why would he not veto?
Doesn't appear to be much reason, any political reason for him not to.
Well, I don't know. If you get one of those guys to
Well, no,
change
you have to
their
have two.
Huh?
You have to have two, because according to the paper, you only need a simple majority to override the veto. So that's actually a lesser vote than they had originally.
Right, they'd have to drop down to 7.
Yeah, they'd have to have two switch a vote.
Well, no, wait a minute.
Wasn't it 9 to 5?
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Will he? You think he's going to veto it, John?
From what I've heard, yes, he's going to veto it.
Well, I think it's nice that he's going to make these commissioners vote twice.
Well, actually, there's a little bit of an interesting story there, and the Sunshine Law is so hard to kind of figure, and you'll get different opinions from almost everybody you talk to. But there was a letter. If y'all will notice, last week there was a notice that they've already got a meeting scheduled for Friday,
right,
to revote. Mm-hmm. Well, there was a letter that was sent to Chairman Mull, although Chairman Mull signed the letter as well. And the letter states, we, the undersigned, and then all of the commissioners that voted for the tax increase have signed the letter. And then the letter also goes into the different legislative things they're going to vote on, because there's 4 different kind of proposals here.
Right.
Well, we, the undersigned, to me seems like a violation of the Sunshine Act. I mean, how do we, the undersigned, discuss this legislation without violating the Sunshine Law? On top of the fact that it's calling for a meeting, this is last week,
right,
calling for a meeting to deal with something that hadn't happened yet. So, as I understand it, I'm not sure it's going to go anywhere because there's all this argument about when they signed it, and I think their assistant is going to probably end up saying, I called each one separately and they came in and signed it. I'm not sure. It certainly violates the spirit of the Sunshine Law.
Well, Why do you think they wrote the letter? Something
because there's a timing thing here. They don't want to. They have to. I think it's 10 days. I believe they have to have a notice to the public 10 days before. So if the mayor vetoes it today, then they could call a meeting tonight, and then they have to put notice in. So it would delay the tax increase for another 2 weeks probably. And God forbid we don't reach into the taxpayer's pocket as quickly as we can. Now, the amazing thing is we are so tight on money that we have to raise taxes, but we found $150 to have a camera, a security camera, moved in the courthouse that was looking into a room where probably the sunshine law is being violated.
Is that the wedding room where you get married?
I don't think so. What's amazing about it, if you really think about this, and I know I get accused of being way too one of the commissioners told me a year or so ago that I was an ideologue, and apparently that's a bad thing. And my comment back was, I don't think an ideologue's a bad thing at all. It depends on what you're an ideologue for. If you're an ideologue for honesty and fairness and things like that, it's great. If you're an ideologue for domination and control, it's not. But anyway, so you hire a security firm. And you say, when we're rebuilding the courthouse, and you say, you all are experts. We want you to place the cameras where they need to be for the safety and security of the public and the commissioners at whole. And then they place one somewhere that you don't like. And you don't run it through law enforcement committee. You don't really name it. It wasn't brought up, the $150 appropriation, from what I understand, wasn't brought up as this is an appropriation to move a security camera. It was listed as like, oh, this is just a housekeeping thing. Mm-hmm. You don't notify the sheriff. The sheriff didn't know anything about this. And court security, from what I understand, didn't know anything about this. Now, they're in charge of security in the courthouse, and they're the experts. He's the elected public safety official in the county, Bradley County, and he wasn't notified or asked. So I just, we asked last week, I'll ask this week. Please inform me why that camera had to be moved.
Well, they have to spend $150 if they didn't like it. Why didn't you just tape it up?
Well, I guess that would have been a bigger PR. I guess they thought, if we can get away with this is better than actually covering it or unplugging it.
Oh, Lordy, Lordy, Lordy.
But if money's so tight, seems like $150 to make sure that there's no record of who's coming and going out of a certain room certainly wasn't out of reach for our county commission.
All right, I want to ask you about what you think about the Iran oil tanker situation. What's going to happen here? Iran's lost it, hasn't it?
I think it's interesting that President Trump is doing the exact opposite of what the Democrats have yelled. They've been all over the board with him. One, he's going to start World War III, and then he's too chummy with North Korea. In this case, I think he's showing a lot of restraint that a lot of people weren't sure he would. And I'm not trying. I know I did make a partisan dig, but I don't think Obama, I don't think Bush, any of them want war. I don't think Trump wants war. I think Iran is desperate to provoke a war. And I think right now we're probably doing the best. Britain is the one that's really in trouble because both the tankers have been British.
Why do you think Iran desperate to provoke a war?
Because the sanctions have crippled their economy, and there's a lot of unrest inside the country. They've actually, the money that they've been supplying to Hezbollah and Hamas has pretty much completely dried up from most reports. Because this money that once Obama turned their economy back up, they immediately started funneling money to Hezbollah and Hamas again, because they're the major funder for these terrorist organizations.
Somebody told me, how much money did Obama give Iran?
It was 100 or 350? It was billions of dollars.
It wasn't $100 billion.
How much was it, Franklin?
I'll have to look.
I said it was billions. I think it was 154 billion or something like that.
It was a lot of money. How many walls could we have built with that money?
Well, they immediately started funneling money to Hezbollah and Hamas because the treaty that Trump walked away from didn't address their sponsorship of terrorism in any way at all.
How many walls do you think we could have built with that money?
Well, he only wanted $5 billion from Congress this year.
So I know it was $150 billion, I think.
I don't know. It's hard to look at pallets of plastic wrapped
And airplanes,
dollar
too.
bills, untraceable dollar bills sent to them. Hard to understand that.
I mean,
that's another thing. Why wouldn't you have just transferred that money electronically through the banking system?
Because he didn't want anybody to know.
Because
it.
you could have traced that.
That's right. You know, you sit there and you look at all the hassle we've been over just trying to secure our border. Trump's wanting to build a wall, and all the crap they give us about that. And then you look at things like this.
Actually, surveys in Mexico show that the Mexican people are starting to agree with Trump. Because it's, the immigration comes through Mexico and it's destroying their economy.
Right.
So they're actually, and their laws are actually much stricter than ours on immigration. So are Canada's. So both those two countries that have actually piled on in criticizing Trump, Canada, you can't enter the country at all as an illegal. And the only way you can come in, you have to have a contact and a job to be allowed into Canada.
I can't, every time I've been out of the country, I've had to present paperwork to show that I was an American citizen where I was coming from.
By the way, the number of illegal aliens captured at the southern border from Africa has skyrocketed in the last couple of months. They are capturing thousands of people from Africa now on the border.
What do you think's going on with all this? I mean, I'm just talking
Well,
about...
Hamas and Hezbollah are in Central America. Al-Qaeda is in Central America. We've caught multiple terrorists in Central America trying to join the caravans. Well, that's interesting, too. Nancy Pelosi, there's an interesting quote that has resurfaced from her. This was in 2008. Securing the border is the first principle that we all have when we talk about the immigration issue. While we need to address the issue of immigration and the challenge we have of undocumented people in our country, we certainly don't want any more coming in. That's Nancy Pelosi, Franklin. Just what, 10 years ago.
There's two groups of immigrants we're talking about.
All right.
We're talking about illegal crossers.
Okay.
And we're talking about people seeking asylum.
Well,
it would be helpful.
How do you know the difference? How do you know the difference?
People seeking asylum walk up and ask for asylum.
Franklin, the problem with that is we used to interpret that you had to be a religious minority, a political minority, you had to be under some threat. Now they walk up, the vast majority of them through the legal system are actually denied because their only complaint is, my country sucks.
The State
and who's coaching them?
The State Department.
Pelosi's coaching them. There are Democrat congressmen have actually gone into Mexico and coached them.
Trump's State Department issued a report in January that said, and I'm quoting from it, there is no credible evidence indicating that international terrorist groups sent operatives via Mexico into the United States. That's the administration's people. That does not mean.
We know that Al-Qaeda is active in Central America. We know that Hamas and Hezbollah are active in Central and South
John,
America.
you're saying that there's some evidence.
Franklin, we got
people
thousands of people from Africa that have made it up here. What? Tell me that. You think those people are swimming the ocean? Are they swimming across to Mexico?
Does that make them terrorists,
No,
John?
Franklin, but it shows you that the route is open to anybody. And you got Nancy Pelosi just a few years ago completely in track with President Trump, who has now done a 180, Pelosi has, and your party has. Matter of fact, there's some interesting video from Campus Reform, which is a college group. They went around this campus and they read a quote from President Trump about immigration, about how we can't let these people in and they don't have a right. It actually talks about what you're saying, that asylum is not for people who are fleeing bad economies or crime. It's for persecuted people. And these students go, oh, that's terrible, he's a racist. And then the guy says, well, guess what? That wasn't a quote from Trump. It's a quote from Barack Obama. And all of them went, really? Well, gosh, I wouldn't have thought Barack Obama would have said that. And by the way, when we talk about his comments about deporting people, did you have the same problem when Jerry Nadler was actually demanding that the State Department look into having Sebastian Gorka deported just a year and a half ago?
I would.
No, you didn't.
Well, I didn't know he was trying to do that.
It was all over the news, Franklin.
I didn't see that on the news.
They don't show this stuff on
CNN. On the news because you don't watch anything that doesn't protect the Democratic Party.
Sure.
This is Jerry Nadler He is asking the White House to hand President Trump's aide Sebastian Gorka's immigration paperwork over. Democrat Senators Dick Durbin, Richard Blumenthal, and Ben Cardin tried to revoke his citizenship. So, and by the way, they've also unearthed previous text messages. Rashida Tlaib, for example, actually said deport that MF about President Trump just a year ago, and Ilhan Omar in a Twitter thread talked about deporting people that didn't agree with her. So it's amazing that nobody in the mainstream media has found those historical
things. The honest answer is nobody pays attention to them generally, except Fox News.
You mean Jerry Nadler, the chairman of the committee? Nobody pays attention to him when he demands in a written letter that a cabinet appointee.
I just told you that would be wrong, and I'd be opposed to it.
But you're making my point. The mainstream media didn't publicize it at all. They made no big deal about it.
You didn't come in here and talk about it either, John.
Actually, I saw it, and I think I did mention it, Franklin, because I certainly knew about it.
Well, let me ask you this. Has CNN talked about Puerto Rico's governor this week any?
Many, many times.
All right, what's going on?
Apparently, he's a corrupt con man.
The same corrupt government that mismanaged the help from FEMA that President Trump provided, that Democrats, including Franklin, said Trump had neglected the island. It was actually the political infrastructure locally that screwed it up. Millions of bottles of water.
In other words, again, Trump did a good job.
Well, Puerto Rico, this is a Democrat administration, once again.
Dum, da-dum. Well, anyway, I think the good news is, I think this guy's getting a message, and I've heard that today he might resign.
He's supposed to resign today. He announced Sunday that he wouldn't run for re-election, but that he wasn't going to resign. And then apparently last night, because the crowds were cheering, last night he announced that he would be stepping down.
Mm-hmm. Well, today it starts around 8:30, I think. Jerry Nadler, we get to watch him.
You know, the guy that tried to deport Sebastian Gorka.
We get to watch him again. He's got Mueller coming in to testify. Now, what do you think's going to come out of all that? What do you think's going to happen there? Besides a circus they've created.
Well, first off, they're going to allow Mueller. One of the reports, not partisan, Republican and Democrat, that Mueller was sort of a hands-off figurehead type guy. So he actually has said that he's not sure he'll remember or know everything, and he wants his longtime personal attorney with him. And they're not going to swear the attorney in, which is somewhat unusual.
And he's also the one that represented Hillary.
He represented an aide who bleached and took a hammer to Hillary's BlackBerry.
Mm-hmm. And they already had 19 Democratic lawyers investigating this, and they came up with a solution. And now why are they talking about it anymore?
Well, it's like this. And frankly, it'd be interesting to get your take on it. All this mainstream media, CNN, all of them, a couple of days ago made a big pitch about how the Justice Department had sent a letter to Mueller instructing him how to answer the questions.
Oh, I know.
And that was a big conspiracy.
CNN, how did they put it out?
It was more evidence of obstruction of justice. And so the Justice Department comes out and said, we only did that because Robert Mueller, in writing, requested that we do it.
He requested in writing that they outline any restrictions they wanted.
Which is what they did, and the mainstream media claimed that they were trying to silence him.
But that's not the point. The point is, why do they want any restrictions on his testimony?
Because he's a prosecutor and he has restrictions.
No, he's not. He's a private citizen. He's not subject to those
All right, Franklin, let me ask you a question. You've got a client, and they investigate him, and they decline to prosecute him. And then one of the prosecutors says, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going back into private practice. I'm now going to release all of the grand jury dirty things we found out about him, even though we didn't find anything we could prosecute. I'm going to release all of this.
First of all,
what are you as his lawyer going to do?
That's part of the testimony.
You're going to sue that guy.
Hold on. That's part of the question today. The question is, did they find that there's nothing to prosecute, or did he find that because of the Justice Department memo that says you can't indict a president, that there's nothing to prosecute?
Let me ask you something.
Which is it?
That's
an important question.
Why did he even have an investigation?
No, he hadn't.
Why did they have an investigation if he knew that?
because the investigation initially was about Russian interference.
And how many questions is he going to get for that?
Yeah.
Only probably from the Republicans.
When he found out Trump wasn't involved, why did the investigation
I don't
continue?
know that he found that out.
He did
That's
find
not what
that
he said.
Yeah, he did.
That's not what he said.
Yes, it is.
No, he didn't.
He said that
You're gonna find out
in
today.
the report.
I can't wait for the
Look,
Republicans.
they've actually
I would
admitted,
love for
Franklin,
the report
they have
to be
actually
out.
admitted all they want is the publicity. They said
They
that the
want sound
report,
bites.
the
All they want
report
sound
didn't
bites.
get enough publicity, and the public just didn't understand the report, so they want to reread it, basically. They're
All
going
they
to
want-
make him read his report.
They want sound bites is all they want right now.
Well, here's an interesting question.
The country's tired of this crap, Franklin.
Well, actually, the polling shows they are tired.
Actually, 60% of Republicans polled yesterday said that they thought Mueller was a credible person.
Nobody's saying he's not credible.
Yes, the
We're saying.
president has been saying it for 18 months, John.
Well, Franklin, first
18
off,
months. I've listened to him say
Look,
it's a witch hunt.
It is a witch hunt.
It is a witch hunt.
Franklin, that's
It is
two
a
different
witch
things.
hunt.
You're talking out both sides of your
No,
mouth.
I'm not.
Yes, you are.
It's ridiculous the way you guys have trashed this man's reputation, who's done nothing but serve his
You mean
country
the guy who
honorably.
appointed all Democrats to his
No, he
investigating?
didn't.
Yes,
No,
he
he didn't
did,
report
Franklin.
19 of them.
And 2 of them had to be kicked off because they were clearly partisan once their text messages surfaced. Answer
He
that
did
one.
not appoint all Democrats,
They're-
and you know that's a bold-faced lie, John.
They're all Democrats, Franklin. They all donated money to Democrats. Most of
That makes them a Democrat.
There were multiple. Yes, it does make them a Democrat.
So if I ever
Franklin.
gave somebody, a Republican who I happen to like, a contribution, that makes me a Republican?
Franklin.
Come on.
Franklin.
You say this crap. and
Have you
expect
ever
people
done
to
that,
believe it.
Franklin? I wanna
Stop
ask-
drinking the
have
Kool-Aid.
you ever done
If you
that?
donate to Hillary Clinton in the same election cycle that you then come in to investigate, you're a Democrat at that point. In that context, certainly. If they donated to Hillary, which multiple, huge numbers of them did, then they shouldn't be on the committee. Because actually, we discourage FBI agents, any of these people, from participating at all in political events for that very reason. But here's my question I would want to ask him, Franklin. I want to know, was there any Russian attempts to influence the election in 2016?
The answer will be yes.
Answer will be yes. Here's my follow-up. Who was the president and vice president during that time?
That would be Barack Obama.
And who's the vice president?
Joe Biden.
So it happened on their watch.
Okay.
That's what we ought to get out of this.
Well, we already know that.
No, we haven't done anything about that. None of your people are fussing about that. Your president, Barack Obama, is the one that allowed it to happen.
Fine. Investigate that.
Why are they?
Who's stopping you?
Well, that's what he was supposed to investigate.
This is what
That's
I'm
what
gonna say
he was.
this
Was
one
that
time
not
and
what
one
he was
time
supposed to
only.
investigate?
As far as I'm concerned, these hypocritical Republicans can just shut the hell up.
Why?
Because
I feel the same way about those Democrats.
Listen, you're in charge. You want to investigate it? Go investigate it.
Guess
And
what?
I welcome you doing it.
Guess what?
And in fact, I demand you investigate
Well, let me
it.
ask you a question.
All
then.
right? Because I'm not a coward or a hypocrite
Franklin,
about this.
actually, you're a complete
It
hypocrite.
should be investigated. And you go
Actually,
ahead and do
frankly,
it. But you're not going to do
Are you
it
going to let me
because you're
talk?
scared.
Are you going to let me talk?
No,
we
because
did.
you've been talking all
We
day.
did investigate,
and I've let you have
Franklin.
80%
We
of
did
it.
investigate.
No,
That's
no.
what President Trump, a Republican,
You control the
Franklin,
Justice Department.
President
Do
Trump,
whatever you want to do, John.
Franklin,
If you think you
Congress.
got evidence,
Franklin,
then
why don't you let someone else
But
talk?
you're not going to do it because all you care
You know
about
what? Every
is the
time you get in a
politics of it.
hole, this is what you do. You start screaming, and you won't let anybody say anything. Franklin,
For God's sake.
a Republican president, President Trump, with a Republican Justice Department, appointed Robert Mueller to investigate this. And his entire report centers on the president, which turned out to be nothing burger, but the actual Russian hoax of collusion fell apart, but the Russian attempts got very little attention. So we did investigate it. We put Robert Mueller in charge of it, and I guarantee you, your Democrat senators,
It didn't fall apart
your
when the
Democrat
president's campaign
representatives
manager
and senators
was sharing information with Russian spies.
will not answer or ask him at all about why didn't you investigate the Obama administration's failure to act. They won't ask that question, and that's the real thing you ought to ask him. Why isn't that in his report?
Fine, ask him that.
But
I don't have a problem with that. I don't think there ought to be any limitations on the questions they ask him, whether it's a Republican or Democrat. Will you take that deal, John?
As far as national security, Franklin, I guarantee you, we can talk about it next week. The questions that actually go towards national security will be asked by the Republicans today, not by the Democrats.
Okay. Well, there aren't any Democrats trying to limit his testimony. It's only Republicans.
Things like grand jury information.
Oh, for God's sakes, John.
Things like
when the
national
president's
security
son takes
information.
the fifth, don't tell me that there's no evidence out
You mean
there.
like Lois Lerner?
Hey,
Yeah, sure. Fine.
wait,
Take that.
all right, both of you be quiet a minute. Let me ask this question. Why are they even having this today? Why do they have Mueller coming in? He gave his report.
Mm-hmm.
He investigated.
Why are y'all so worried about it?
I'm not. But
Yes, you are. Y'all having a seizure.
Franklin,
No, we're not, Franklin.
You've been having a seizure.
Let me
over
tell you
it.
who's going to have a
Franklin,
seizure.
wait a minute. Let me finish, John. You know what I said about a carnival a while ago you didn't like? That's what they create. The Democrats are getting nothing done. What have they done this year to help our country? Tell me one thing the Democrats have done to help our country.
Well, apparently they reached a long-term budget deal with the president this week.
And guess what, Frank? I'll give you bipartisanship. I think it sucks. I think we're Republicans and Democrats are spending too much money.
There you go.
We've got to cut our spending.
That's right. Now, Trump went along with the budget the first time so he could get money for the military. Did you know that?
Well,
That's what he said.
that's the balancing act that Republicans say, oh, well, we got our military. And I agree we need the military, but we've
Right.
got to cut spending.
I agree.
And so here's what's interesting. I read them yesterday. The Republican leadership said this budget deal allows us to rebuild our military, and that's absolutely true. But the Democrat leadership, Schumer and Pelosi, said this budget allows us to rebuild our social net. So both sides are selling it to their base, but the point is we're spending too damn much money.
Well, I wish we could talk a little more, but we've got to go home
Well, I
and
guess
watch
we'll be able to
Mueller
talk
now
about
if you're
it next
retired.
week, won't we?
Yeah, we'll see what really happens today. And I bet you there's a lot of negative that comes out of it for no reason.
Well, Chairman Jabba the Hutt, I'm sure will rule.
All right, I've got that hat I promised. I believe William a couple of weeks ago down here at the studio now, so it's here anytime you want it, buddy. Come get it. Come get it at 3:30 when Pro Daddy's here. See you now. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop